Ludger meets other professors who teach at Soren Academy, and they all introduce themselves. One of the professors, who is a noble, seems upset at the other professors who are all commoners. The noble professor makes fun of the others and walks away. The rest of the professors decide to ignore him and go out to eat together. That night, in a random house, the third Ord member of the mysterious organization is typing on their computer. They make a post telling other students to attend Ludger's class, which makes a lot of other students interested. The next day, Ludger walks into his class and he is surprised that the entire room is filled with students. He only expected 30 people to attend his class, but all 80 seats in the room were filled. Ludger introduces himself to the class again because there may have been some students who didn't know him before. While he is speaking, a student raises their hand and asks a question about what the class will be about. Ludger looks at the student with anger and tells him that questions can only be asked when the teacher allows them. Ludger continues to talk to the student and makes sure they all understand the rules of the class. Ludger tells the students that his class will teach all 4 specializations of magic. The 4 specializations are release, element property, telekinesis, and reinforcement. Some of the students doubt that Ludger will be able to teach all 4 specializations properly. Ludger doesn't pay attention to them, and instead decides to show the students something to get them interested in the class. Ludger casts a 3rd-tier flame spell called Fluttering Flame and explains the properties of the spell. He shows the spell to the class and tells them he has a way to cast the spell 3 times faster than normal. The students are all shocked by Ludger's announcement and try to think about a way for this to be possible. Ludger asks the class if they have any questions, and a lot of students shout out their questions. Ludger answers the questions and explains that he will teach them a way to shorten the casting time of the spell without modifying it. In response to this, one of the students, named Flora, tells the class that this is impossible. Ludger responds by asking Flora why she thinks it is impossible. Flora says that the only way to shorten casting time is through practice and repetition, and she calls Ludger a liar for pretending to know a way to fix this. Ludger thinks for a moment and responds by saying that magic has been stagnant for too long, saying that it is actually possible to shorten the casting time of spells. He asks Flora how long it should take to cast the spell, and she tells him that even the highest level wizards can only do it in 5 seconds. Ludger asks Flora to come down to the floor and show the students how fast she can cast it. Flora listens to him and casts the spell. Ludger compliments Flora on her abilities, but says that it's still too slow. Ludger holds out his wand and casts a laser-like spell, which then transforms into the fire spell in less than a second. The entire class is shocked at how fast Ludger was able to cast the spell, and they ask him how this is possible. He responds by saying that he used one spell in order to cast another, describing the process like how a blueprint is used. Ludger calls this type of magic the source code. Flora is shocked at this new type of magic and is forced to apologize to Ludger for interrupting the class. Flora goes back to her seat and is extremely mad at Ludger for embarrassing her in front of the class. After this, Ludger starts teaching the class properly, and all the students are impressed by Ludger's teaching abilities. After the lesson is over, one of the students comments on how amazing the source code was. Another student comes over and makes fun of the first student for being a commoner. While this is happening, another student comes up and makes fun of the noble for being an idiot. The noble kid walks away as he cannot mess with the blue-haired kid. The brown-haired student thanks him for the help and he introduces himself as Aiden. And the blue-haired kid introduces himself as Leo. They both decide to go to next class together. Leo tells Aiden about some of the kids in their class that are very powerful. First, Leo talks about Flora, the student who was embarrassed earlier. Then he talks about the 3rd princess, Elenda von Exilion, who is a member of the upper nobility. Finally, Leo tells him about Fruden Wolfsburg, who is a very powerful noble. While walking back to his office, Ludger is happy with how the class went, and relieved for it to be finally over. When he gets to his office, he is shocked to see that the principal is standing in the middle of the room. Ludger asks the principal why she's visiting him, and she says she was just interested in how he was doing. Ludger is very uncomfortable with the principal showing up in his room, and tries to find out what she is really up to. The principal compliments Ludger on how his classes are going and gives him some information on the students in the class, and there is a royal princess among his students. She then leaves after telling Ludger that she has high expectations of him. After she leaves the room, the butler asks her if she thinks Ludger can be trusted or not. The principal says that she can't be sure of anything yet, but she is still impressed by Ludger's abilities. She still thinks there's a possibility that Ludger may be a spy planted by the terrorist organization, but she doesn't have any evidence to act on yet. The principal decided to keep an eye on Ludger for a while longer. Back in his room, Ludger lets out a sigh of relief and sits back on his sofa. He worries about how the principal just interrogated him and tries to make a plan for the future. After he finishes thinking, he starts looking at the students in his class. While doing this, he notices that the boy from earlier, Aiden, has uncommon magic. Ludger tries to decide whether or not he should side with the mysterious organization, but decides to just continue being a normal professor like usual. Suddenly, though, he receives a knock on his door and is handed a letter. The letter tells Ludger that it is his turn to patrol the school after dark, which was one of his responsibilities that was listed in the contract. At night, in the training ground, a student is being bullied by a bunch of other students. The group is trying to get the single student to leave the training ground, but she refuses to leave. The group of nobles get angry at the commoner student, and they make fun of her for being of a lower class member. The commoner turns to leave but is attacked from behind by one of the nobles. As the commoner student is about to get hit, Ludger steps in and diverts the attack. He scolds the nobles for trying to start a fight with the commoner student and tells them that they are being cowards for using a surprise attack. When the noble students try to talk back, Ludger tells them that all students are equal in Soren Academy, and them being nobles doesn't matter here. When Ludger tells them they will be punished, one of the nobles yells that he is just a mere fallen aristocrat and therefore is worth less than them. After he hears this, Ludger goes silent in anger and asks the student to repeat themselves while glaring down at them. Ludger lets out a powerful wave of magic and taunts the students into saying something again. The girl who made fun of Ludger shakes in fear and is clearly very scared of him. Ludger towers over the girl and asks her to repeat herself once more. Just as it looks like Ludger is about to hit the girl, he rests a hand on her shoulder and tells the girl that he may be a fallen aristocrat, but he's still a professor of Soren Academy. After giving her a brief warning, Ludger turns and walks away. Outside, Ludger sits on a bench and is holding his head in his hands. Some strange illness seems to be affecting him, and he takes some medicine in order to calm himself down. After the pain passes, Ludger reveals that he has some sort of mana-related illness, where he has to take medicine to suppress the pain. After taking the medicine, he doesn't have any left and decides to contact a mysterious figure in order to restock his supply. While eating with the professors the next day, Ludger hears reports of a werewolf in the town next to Soren Academy. Apparently, the werewolf was sighted inside Soren Academy too. After talking about this, the two professors compliment Ludger on his first lesson going so well. The other professors seem to be jealous of the attention Ludger is getting and glare at him from the sides of the room. That night in the city near Soren, Ludger stands in a dark alley and is approached by a figure from behind. The figure appears to be one of the werewolves that were mentioned in the rumor, and the werewolf tries to attack Ludger from behind. Ludger dodges and kicks the werewolf through a wall, almost knocking him out. After this, Ludger approaches the werewolf and talks to it as if they are old friends. The werewolf stands up and responds to Ludger, calling him brother. Hans is a human who has a special type of body, where if he is bitten by an animal, he turns into a half-human, half-beast form without any control. This time, Hans was bitten by a Pomeranian, and turned into a half-Pomeranian. Ludger gives Hans some kind of medicine, and Hans turns back into a human almost immediately. Hans and Ludger met a long time ago when Ludger tried to hunt Hans down thinking he was some kind of monster. Now the two are close friends and help each other often. Ludger tells Hans about the mysterious organization he has been forced into, and Hans tries to think of the name of the organization. Hans finally remembers that the organization is called the Black Dawn Society. After they talk for a bit, Hans hands Ludger a suitcase full of a supply of medicine, which Ludger eats right away. Ludger thinks that Hans was the werewolf that was talked about in the rumors, but Hans says he has only been in town for a day. They realize at the same time that there must be a real werewolf around the town, and as soon as they think about it, they hear a howl from the distance. On the top of a building, the figure of a werewolf is sitting crouched. Hans tries to tell Ludger to run away, but Ludger decides to catch the werewolf in order to find out what it is. Ludger pulls out a revolver and steps out from the streets in order to catch the monster. Hans remembers one of Ludger's earlier identities was a monster hunter named Abraham Van Helsing. The werewolf notices Ludger and turns to see him. Ludger also approaches the monster slowly. The werewolf growls at Ludger and jumps at him, landing right in front of Ludger. The monster stands up straight with its eyes glowing, and Ludger watches patiently with his hands still in his pockets. The werewolf howls and swipes at Ludger, which Ludger dodges easily. Using some form of magic, Ludger is able to avoid all of the werewolf's attacks until he finds himself backed into a wall. The werewolf attacks Ludger head-on, but Ludger just smiles and deploys a spell to confuse the werewolf. The spell makes a super high-pitched sound that only the werewolf could hear, which made the werewolf fall over in pain. Ludger stands over the beast with a syringe in his hand, but before he could get the chance to do anything, the police distracts him and the werewolf is able to escape onto the roof. Ludger uses a grappling hook in his arm in order to chase the beast, and swings onto the rooftops as well. Ludger runs after the beast, but both of them have the same speed. They run across many rooftops until the werewolf finally stops and turns to face Ludger. The two stand against each other and Ludger pulls out a set of ninja stars. The werewolf charges at Ludger, but Ludger stands his ground and throws a ninja star at the beast. The weapon scratches the werewolf, but it isn't able to slow him down at all. However, suddenly out of nowhere, the ninja star comes back towards the werewolf and stops him in place. Ludger catches the throwing weapon again and fires a spell at the beast. The spell hits the werewolf right in the chest, and Ludger continues to attack the beast with his weapons. The werewolf backs up, but he gets hit by one of Ludger's ninja stars, allowing Ludger to get in close and deal the final blow. After the fight is over, Ludger brings the body of the beast to Hans to investigate it. The two found out that the beast is an artificial creature and was created as part of some sort of experiment. After saying this, Ludger tells Hans that they should settle down near Soren Academy. Hans agrees after listening to Ludger's words, and the two agree to make an organization of their own in the city. The newspaper in Soren talks about a series of murders that are going on in the city, and how the werewolf is still thought to be on the loose. After reading this, Ludger realizes that there may have been two werewolves, and that the one he killed was not alone. Ludger then receives a transmission to attend a meeting with the professors of Soren Academy. As he is sitting down, one of the other professors tells Ludger that two first-year students were attacked the night before. The two students survived but were heavily wounded. The principal then arrives in the room and starts talking to all of the staff. She talks about the two students that were injured at night and tells the staff that a werewolf is currently a suspect in the crime. A professor named Hugo stands up and tells the principal that werewolves don't exist in Soren. The principal dismisses the professor, but Hugo goes on to accuse a commoner of being the one to commit the crime of injuring two Nobel students. The principal is clearly upset at this and starts to argue with Professor Hugo. During this, Ludger receives a note in the form of a spider which tells him to get rid of the escaped werewolves. The note is from the Black Dawn Society that Ludger is a part of, and he curses his luck for getting involved in the situation. The note says that there is a chance that Ludger's identity will be revealed if he doesn't act, which forces him into trying to apprehend the werewolves at the academy. The principal finishes talking with Professor Hugo and tells the other staff to not allow the students to go outside during the night. After the meeting ends, Ludger walks out on the street of Soren Academy when he is approached by a student from behind. The student who approached him is the same third-class member of the Black Dawn Society that Ludger met before. The student tries to say something to Ludger, but he tells her to follow him to a coffee shop to talk. The two sit together in a cafe, and Ludger starts asking the student questions. The student introduces herself as Sedina and tells Ludger that the werewolves are related to the Black Dawn Society. While trying to experiment, one of the related organizations let a subject escape accidentally, and the test subject is currently on the loose in Soren Academy. Because Ludger's name is included in the organization which conducted the experiments, if the werewolves are captured by Soren Academy, Ludger will be in a lot of danger. After hearing this, Ludger decides to hunt down the remaining two werewolves and leaves Sedina behind at the cafe. Ludger compliments Sedina on the way she explained the details of the case, and Sedina is thankful for it. They were being watched by Flora, but she couldn't hear them properly because there was a sound cancellation magic casted around both of them. Next day, Flora is still suspicious as to why Ludger used noise cancellation magic for a simple talk with a student. At the same time, Aiden and Leo are talking about the rumors of a werewolf inside of the school grounds. Aiden says that if they are found outside at night, they will receive a penalty point from the teachers. Leo also agrees with Aiden and the two decide to stay inside. While they are talking, a third student named Tessie approaches the table. They greet each other, but Tessie seems to be angry at Aiden. Tessie tries to challenge Aiden to a battle, but Aiden says that it'll be impossible for them to fight properly. Aiden makes an excuse, but Tessie insists on competing against Aiden in some way. Tessie suggests that the first person to catch the werewolf is the winner of their competition, and Leo agrees for Aiden. Leo thinks that Tessie isn't dumb enough to go hunting for the werewolf, but they notice Tessie run off into the woods, and they both quickly run after her. That night, Ludger is patrolling the grounds of Soren Academy. Earlier that day, Hugo tried to get Ludger to join the noble side of the professors, but Ludger refused, saying that everyone is equal in Soren Academy. While patrolling, Ludger finds a group of students hiding in the bushes and gives them all penalty points for not following the rules. At a sewage treatment plant where Sedina told Ludger the werewolves would be, Ludger finds a pair of footprints. He follows the footprints to a sewer grate that's been ripped through, where the two footprints separate into different paths. The bigger footsteps lead towards Soren Academy, so Ludger decides to follow them. While on the trail, he hears a scream in the woods, and he runs there to help the students. He sees a werewolf attacking two students. He fires a spell at the werewolf to get it to leave. The spell hits the werewolf and knocks him away, and Ludger stands over the students to protect them. The two students are the Princess of the Empire and a commoner girl Ludger defended before. Ludger tells the students to get back to their dorms before they can cause more trouble for him. The werewolf stands up and Ludger faces it, but before Ludger can do anything, the werewolf jumps away. Ludger chases after it and tells the students to find shelter. The werewolf runs up a building, and Ludger chases it using his grappling hook. The two face each other on the roof of the academy. Before they jump and attack each other mid-air, the two exchange blows for a second before hitting the floor. Ludger steps back and casts a fire spell at the werewolf. He then jumps over the werewolf and uses another spell to attack it. The werewolf still manages to swipe at Ludger, but Ludger fires another spell at the werewolf, knocking it off the roof of the building. As it falls, Ludger uses an ice spell on the werewolf, thinking that the fight is over. Suddenly though, the werewolf springs up and throws a rock at Ludger. Ludger is shocked that a werewolf is smart enough to use tools, and realizes that this werewolf must be different. Somewhere else in the forest, Leo and Aiden are looking for Tessie, when they hear a scream and run towards it. They find Tessie unharmed, where she points to a baby werewolf hidden in a pile of leaves. The three of them realize the werewolf must be wounded and sick, and it must be trying to hide in order to stay safe. They think that some other werewolf must be around in order to hide this baby and keep it safe. And as they are wondering about it, a werewolf approaches the three of them from behind.